All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being a part of this. And I'd like to say thank you to OHSU for inviting me to speak about something I'm very passionate about.
Anyway, so
And
they're
so
sending you.
I'm getting
So
some.
can everyone please go on mute who is not currently speaking? Thank you.
Thank you. So I started my career in the trenches of engineering, having graduated in biomedical engineering from Arizona State University. And during my college years, I spent time building exoskeleton robots for a startup company for stroke rehabilitation. After graduating college, I was fortunate enough to join a cardiovascular startup as employee number 4, designing percutaneous cardiovascular implants. It was there that I quickly realized that although I thought critically like an engineer, I wasn't truly an engineer. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I found that the typical engineer was brilliant in taking scientific or physical elements and combining them in unique ways to build something new. That's the way they think, and we need that, right? But the entire time I worked with engineers doing these amazing things, my thinking was always, why are we building this? Who is going to buy this? And does anyone care? And so I found myself aligning to researching markets, writing market requirements, and getting into the head of the customer, and then translating that knowledge back to the engineers. In 2008, I joined my 4th startup company as employee number 7. It was there that I learned the ropes further about the calculated art of shaping products to align them to markets. I was fortunate enough to be part of a team that developed several products for the aesthetic space, launching 6 of them globally, reaching 90 million in revenue in 6 years, leading to a $600 million exit. And it was there that I experienced the phrase, it doesn't matter what we think, it matters what the market thinks. I continued to refine this type of thinking when I founded an incubator that attracted over 400 new MedTech concepts that we systematically evaluated for investment and incubation. And now I find myself as the founding principal of a consulting firm that exclusively focuses on aligning the right products to the right markets at the right time. Because I know that through my own experience, that understanding your market is the most important thing for product success. So many of us, and I'm sure you can relate to this, many of us enter medical fields because we have a strong desire to help people, right? Medical professionals are constantly solving patients' problems by assessing symptoms and prescribing solutions. And MedTech professionals are constantly developing better solutions to help doctors solve problems for their patients. There seems to be a recurring theme here of solving problems. And funny enough, that is where it all starts. Healthcare demands innovation, and this innovation saves lives and improves lives. That is something we're all focused on. However, innovation doesn't happen without funding, and funding doesn't happen without a real problem to be solved. So every innovation in the MedTech field starts as an idea that might help someone. I'm guessing many of you have several ideas running through your mind right now, and you might think the world needs that idea. And I would ask you, does the world really need it? MedTech innovator and former CSO of Edwards Life Sciences, Stan Rowe, said it well when he said, most projects don't fail because the technology doesn't work. They fail because we didn't understand the customer requirements, didn't understand the distribution, didn't understand the competition, didn't understand the payers and referral patterns, all those extrinsic factors. If you don't have early stage marketing integrated into your teams, you're flying blind. And the fact of the matter is, in order to have a successful product that ends up improving lives, you have to have a market for the product to align to. And that market has to be lucrative. According to CB Insights, a top market intelligence aggregate, the #1 reason startups fail is no market need. The second reason is ran out of cash, followed by not having the right team, followed by getting beat by the competition. In fact, 16 of the top 20 reasons startups fail has to do with early stage marketing. Without a market, you won't get investors on board. Without a market, you won't get the right team on board. Without a market, nobody will buy the product. But you would be amazed at how many times we talk to passionate innovators thinking they have the next best thing for medicine, but who hasn't even Googled their idea yet. I had a brilliant PhD professor call me up one time saying, Aaron, this invention of mine is going to radically change the ER. And he commenced to describe to me what he had developed, the fact that he just won a $300,000 grant because his idea was so good, and told me he wanted my help developing it and selling it. Piece of cake, right? And I kid you not, I jumped on Google while he was talking on the phone and found 3 other products nearly identical, all of which had failed in the market, by the way. And I copied a link and sent it his way and said, how's your idea different from these? His reply was, well, crap, it isn't different at all. 2 years he'd spent on his product and it didn't have a market at all. And research would have told him that. Other industries other than MedTech aren't as beholden to the innovation cycles MedTech requires. For example, some industries such as SaaS or even your local diner, for instance, can take a launch then refine approach to market validation. Software companies might sell a beta version right away, and a diner might try a new recipe out for a week to see how it sells. But we typically don't have this option in MedTech. So I would make the argument that market validation, market diligence is how I like to call it sometimes. They're said in simpler terms, doing your homework on your market is the #1 most contributing factor towards building a successful MedTech company. So the question is, why doesn't everyone do it? Well, for one, cognitive bias. Cognitive bias leads you to believe in something without proof, purely because it is a product of your own imagination. I've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs over the years, and nearly every one of them had cognitive bias in some shape or form. The successful ones were able to acknowledge their bias and sought out exhaustive, undeniable evidence as to why there was a market for their idea. This is what we refer to as market validation. It is the gathering of that evidence of your product's success long before it is even commercialized. So how do we recommend starting? Well, the first step is pretty simple. You start covering your bases with secondary research, digging into the information that is already out there. We live in a world of information. Diving into internet searches, peer review articles, databases, etc., starts to provide the landscape of your market. Look to answer questions like, is there truly a problem? How big is the problem? What products out there are solving similar problems? What are competitors offering? And one of my personal favorites, what solutions were abandoned that are similar to yours, and why did they fail? After you've exhausted secondary research, then go deeper. Odds are your secondary research will expose a lot more questions about your market and where you fit in. This is when you go directly to customers. Not your friends that will tell you why you're amazing, but to customers who are actually in need of hiring a product like yours to solve their problem. Talking directly with customers is called primary research. It is where you can gain insights to shape your value proposition, which is the reason why anyone cares to use your product over something else. Defining your competitive landscape and market landscape through secondary market research will not only lead you to understanding where your product could fit, but will start to help you define your market size. This is where you find your total available market, your serviceable addressable market, and immediately addressable market, as we like to call them, the TAM, SAM, and IAM. The answers you find in this type of research, both secondary and primary, in evaluating your market size, can be discouraging. And to be frank, I hope it is discouraging as you first keep going, because discouraging information is making you work harder. That information will start to change your idea to something better until eventually you not only find where your product can uniquely fit, but also where your product can dominate. To build a domain, you first have to figure out where the borders are. But this stuff is fun and rewarding. I've experienced that throughout my entire career. This figuring out what your customers' true problems are, knowing that you have a solution they have to have, and knowing what the ultimate, what that ultimately could be worth, I think that's a lot of fun. Improving lives is invaluable, but unfortunately, investors can't work with that. And unless you are independently wealthy or run a large endowment fund or you work in the government, you're going to need investors, and your investors need to know there's a market and that the market is big. If you perform market validation correctly, your chances of success grows exponentially. That's your job as an entrepreneur, to continue to be the expert, to be better than anyone else at knowing your market and having the objective evidence that you're right. So I encourage you to get out there, get out of your own bias, truly understand the market you seek to serve, and success will follow. So with that, Sarah, I'll pass it back to you.